Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today I'm going to do a video basically giving ideas on how we book flights. Now, I've spoken about a few of these things before, kind of tips and tricks on getting cheapest prices and things like that. But this is more of an overall kind of informational about booking flights and kind of the stuff that we're told isn't necessarily true, and then a couple of things that might help you get some cheaper flights. Now, one of the points I'm actually going to make has changed, or at least in my own experience has been something that has flipped in terms of it being a myth or not, since the last time I did one of these videos like this on this information, which was about 2 or 3 years ago. So obviously things do change, technology changes on how we book things, the way that companies have their processes changes. And so these things are always ongoing, but as it is right now, this is the way things are. Now, the big one, the one I'm going to start with, the one that I have actually spoken about before, but I'm changing my mind on, is incognito mode. Doesn't do anything. So I've previously done a video on basically getting cheaper flights. I did the best ways of getting cheaper flights, when to do it, things like this, and one of them was go into incognito mode. But that doesn't really do anything. Now, could be questioned as to whether it ever did anything. Now, I suggested it before because the kind of general thought process at the time was that it helps kind of hide where you've been looking before, so there's dynamic manipulative prices, but that's just not really a thing. Whether it was the case back then, potentially, but processes and the speed in which things are done by airlines now, it's just not a thing. Incognito mode is not going to save you any money. I'm sorry. It may seem like it sometimes, and hey, if you want to have that placebo, you go for it. But in reality, putting yourself in incognito mode is making you no difference at all. It's not helping you save any money. So maybe you want it on just in case, so that the partner that you're booking a flight away for, maybe it's an anniversary present, you might not want them to see it anyway, so you might want it in incognito mode, but in terms of actual price, it's not going to help. Then we have VPNs. Now, there are a lot of listicles and nonsensical kind of content farming things out there that will tell you that if you use a VPN, it won't make any difference to your flight and your price. That's not true. That's simply not true at all. You have a thing called point of sale pricing, and it does seriously affect this. Now, obviously, this will depend on the kind of VPN you're using, because some VPNs don't really show any businesses that you're in that other country. There's just a weird trick that it's doing. But if you have a decent VPN that literally puts you into that specific server of somewhere else, or you are in the other country, you're going to see a big difference. So if you're not using a VPN, or you don't want to use a VPN, maybe ask someone that you know in a country that has lower pricing to actually book the flight for you. I mean, you'll see this a lot. For instance, if you were going from Boston to Gaborone in Botswana, if you're buying it in the US, that's not going to be a cheap ticket. Kind of historically, the US has very high pricing. But if, on the other hand, you're in Botswana buying that ticket, it's going to be a lot less for the same flight. Now, there is a possibility you could have a different airline there that has shown up because of the change of point of sale, but you're going to get a much cheaper ticket. I've had my own personal experience with this when I've been traveling as well, and trust me, you can get some very cheap tickets just from using a different server. Another one that comes up a lot is the best day to book. There's no such thing. there's a kind of a time period which I'll go into later, but best day to book doesn't really exist. Now, it used to. This is one of the other ones that has actually changed. It used to be the case that airlines would upload their kind of inventory of flights on a Monday night, and so Tuesday morning was the absolute best time to snap up those deals whilst you could. So this isn't one that's historically wrong. It very much was the case, but nowadays just doesn't happen. Airlines are kind of constantly changing prices and getting stuff up. There's no big upload at a certain time of the week. So it is very much just finding it at the right time or much in advance. You're not going to get those massive deals just by waiting up until it turns midnight for Tuesday morning. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. So this is a kind of myth now, but one that wasn't in the past. It very much was the case that you used to be able to get cheaper tickets then, but you just can't anymore. So sorry, those of you that like to say, oh, well, you should book on a Tuesday, because that's what this friend of mine who was an air steward told me. Yeah, and maybe if they've been working as an air steward for 20 years, it did used to work. Not anymore. Sorry about that one. Now, that said, there is a best time to actually fly. Now, this isn't actually universal across the board. You tend to have this more in certain parts of the world than others, so do be careful. This is more the case, at least in Europe, very much the case. There is a specific day of the week that's best and one that's worst in terms of cost. Now, weirdly enough, as we just said, Tuesday is no longer the best time to book. It is the best time to fly. And you probably heard me mention this one before, and this is one I am sticking to firmly, and all the research shows it as well. Even some of the booking sites themselves suggest that this is the case. So fly out on a Tuesday. Flights from wherever you're going and to wherever you're coming and going to. It doesn't matter where you are and where you're going in the world. If you're flying out on a Tuesday, it's just cheaper. Now, this is potentially down to the fact that not many people fly on a Tuesday. So this could always change if consumer habits change. But right now, you don't really go on a Tuesday because it's not midweek. So you're not getting ready for something or going away for something. It's not a short week. It's not the beginning of the week because you've got to be somewhere, and it's not the weekend. It's not a Friday. So the cheapest time is absolutely Tuesday. Now, the most expensive day along with that, because you should know that as well, is on a Sunday. Now, that could be kind of obvious because everyone's trying to get back to work or get back to their family or whatever it is on a Sunday, ready for the next week. So don't fly on a Sunday, but especially if you're in Europe, try and get your flight out on a Tuesday morning usually, which is kind of weirdly ironic because it's no longer the cheapest time to book the flight in terms of when you're booking the flight yourself, but it is the best time to fly out. So they've just switched one for the other. Then finally, the thing I said I would mention later on is there is still a best time to book, just not in terms of exact specifics of a week. Now, what I mean by this is a time in advance. You know, oh, should I book a month in advance, a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance? It's that kind of thing we're talking about here. And it's a general rule. So you don't have to be, if I said 2 weeks, you have to be exactly in the 14 days. That's not what I mean here. This is a general time period beforehand. Now, it is very dependent on what you kind of, where you're going. The longer haul flights tend to have a longer need in terms of when you're going to book them. So if, for instance, you're in the US and you're going into Asia, maybe Eastern Europe and Africa, those are kind of the more long haul for you. If you're from Europe going over to Australia, the Far East, things like that, the same kind of long haul for you as well. For those kind of longer international flights, you're looking for the best results 2 or 3 months in advance. Now, this isn't hard and fast. This can change. It's not the case that it's only going to be cheap flights then and then any other time it's not going to happen. It's just the best time generally. Now, of course, airlines have deals. People drop their tickets out. There's so many other reasons that things could happen. There could be a major event that happens in one of the countries, good or bad, will of course change ticket prices. But as a general rule, that's kind of what you'd be looking for. And then something more internal, for instance, Europe to another European country, or America to somewhere else in America, that 2 weeks to a month. Now, personally, I tend to kind of go smack bang in the middle. I tend to book about 3 weeks out. That's my own personal preference. I tend to find about 3 weeks out is right. Now, especially in Europe, I find this as well, because you tend to get those prices cheaper in that little bit beforehand. Now, I know in America especially, and I've heard this from a lot of other people across the board, and so this is more anecdotal because it's from other travelers, that they'll find great deals right at the last minute. From those that have traveled with me before, when I've said about buying tickets, you'll know that that is not the case across the board, especially not in Europe. It's actually the inverse. A lot of the time, your last minute tickets are going to be far more expensive. I had a time when I was traveling with a couple of companions over in Greece, and we were booking a flight to Hungary. Now, this was typically a cheap flight. I booked my flight to Hungary because we just basically said, hey, why don't we just keep going, keep traveling? Let's not just make this Greece. Let's go on to Hungary and everywhere else. And I got my ticket for £9. They waited and it was £39. Now, I realise for a lot of people that are now going, what do you mean? That's not a bad price. Why do I even care? It's only £39. These things can compile. And for that £30, well, if one flight's only £9, you can get a few more of them. So they only waited 2 hours and it went up by £30. So that's a significant increase against the original £9. So that's a last minute thing. It does tend to go up there. So if you're looking at more kind of, as I say, internal, so Europe to other European countries, Africa to other African countries, America internally within America, I'd say 2 weeks to a month. And I personally go for 3 weeks. I go smack bang in the middle. So I like to go that bit either side. So those are just a few things about when you're booking your flights, things to remember, things to not get caught out by or spend your time looking at. Just think about things when you're booking. Yes, it is a good thing to book a little bit in advance so that you get that help. Do you have to go into incognito? No, not really going to help you unless you're booking a surprise flight for someone. And do you have to wait up into the early hours on Tuesday morning? No, but you might want to fly out at that time. So there's all these things that are part of booking flights. But the main thing at the end of the day is wherever you fly, whenever you fly, whatever you're doing when you go there, have fun. Take in the culture, the nature, just everything about where you're going, and just have a good time. Even if it's for work, take yourself out for a nice dinner and you will really enjoy it. So I hope you've taken something from this. Hopefully I've saved you a few pounds, a few dollars, a few dinar, whatever it is. I hope I've saved you a little bit in terms of your flights, and maybe spend that on a slightly nicer room when you get somewhere. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I will see you again next time. Thanks, everyone.